Well, good morning, everybody. This is Truth Seeker, and it's been about a week since I last made a video, the Bottle King video regarding Toni Morris, and I was very pleasantly surprised at the number of views that my channel got on that particular video. It just shows how strongly people feel about the governing body and their hypocrisy, and I sympathize with you completely. And as a result of that, I mentioned something at the end of my video recommending that individuals contact their congressman. I've done so twice in the past, and I believe it's warranted. I believe it's something that should be done, and we all have the right to do so. If we live in the United States of America, where we are the government, we the people, and we have representatives that we elect, and these representatives are our spokesmen for the issues that we feel are important. If you don't believe that you as an individual can be effective in making change and changing, the David and Goliath scenario, that they're just too big, what can I do against them? Well, a lot of voices together can have a tremendous effect. A very good example of that happens to be right in the area that the Watchtower located to. It's called Sterling Forest State Park. Now, Sterling Forest State Park has a very interesting history, and it just so happens that the Watchtower actually bought up pretty much all of the property that was available in the area. Those properties were all being incorporated into the state park, and so Watchtower actually became very fortunate that there was any property left for them to buy. But unfortunately, they did have enough, and they bought up whatever available properties there were. So it just unfortunately worked out that way, and now they're headquartered there, and they're not moving. But the Sterling Forest State Park is an interesting. It's 20,000 acres of undeveloped land that was owned by the Sterling Corporation. Initially, this area was historically iron mining before iron became, Minnesota. Minnesota is known for being the heartland for the iron industry in this country. But before Minnesota, there was North Jersey, and there are old kilns, old furnaces all over the North Jersey area. The mountain behind me was all deforested, all of this area. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of acres of forest here that did not exist 100 years ago or 150 years ago, because it had all been cut down for the iron industry. They used the wood as fuel. The rock here is granite, and it has a high content of magnetite. And magnetite is a rock that is 80% iron. In fact, a magnet, you can get a piece of magnetite, and a magnet will attract to it. It's like a rock iron. And so this area was originally developed by the Sterling Corporation back in the 1700s for iron mining, and then it opened up to other corporate development. And back in the 1950s, the area began to develop with corporations like International Paper, which now They have a large research facility, which now is the Tuxedo Bethel that Watchtower bought. International Nickel, which Watchtower bought. That is now the world headquarters location. That was International Nickel. IBM is still located here, and Union Carbide owned a facility where they had a research nuclear reactor on their property. It was a 5 megawatt nuclear reactor that is now closed, and the property has been donated to Sterling Forest State Park. Now, Sterling Forest State Park, this land all around was undeveloped and remained largely undeveloped. We're only about 40 miles north and west of New York City, and it's about the only undeveloped land in the proximity of New York City. For New York's urban sprawl, New York has a population, if you look at the greater metropolitan area, of 18 million people. So undeveloped land like this area here, Sterling Forest, is very rare. And developers back in the 1990s looked to take the greater part of Sterling Forest and develop it with 30,000 housing units and 3 golf courses. And the New York-New Jersey Trail Commission, these are just a bunch of people who get together and go out hiking. It's a hiking club, and they fix trails, and they make trails, they blaze trails, they keep the markers going. These individuals spoke out against the development of this property. It is a remarkable story how a little grassroots organization ended up stopping a giant development corporation worth millions and millions of dollars from developing the land and donating the land, having it condemned, getting government involved. Senator Lautenberg, Governor Christie Whitman. It's a New York, New Jersey venture because Sterling Forest it crosses the boundary of New York and New Jersey. In fact, the New Jersey line is within feet of the Watchtower headquarters. They're practically sitting in New Jersey. Governor Pataki and Senator Lautenberg, the federal government, started getting involved, and this grassroots welling of opposition to land development led to government involvement and the condemnation of the land. The land was condemned and then incorporated into a state park in 1998. And it became Sterling Forest State Park with, and it's largely in New York State. And the visitor center, which is a beautiful visitor center, is named the Senator Lautenberg Visitor Center, a New Jersey senator who is named on a New York State visitor center located in New York State. It's really an amazing story, and don't go to Wikipedia to look at it. You do not get the full breadth of the idea that how this Sterling Forest had really started with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference and this grassroots opposition to the development. It really was an amazing story. And it involves the Palisades Interstate Park Commission, who now administers this. It's a commission that is a New York, New Jersey joint commission that manages parklands in both New York and in New Jersey. People who have visited the area may know of the Palisades Interstate Parkway, and that's all part of that. And Bear Mountain and Harriman Park, and all of that is managed by the Palisades Interstate Commission, and so is Sterling Forest. And in fact, I was instrumental in having a small part in donating about 100 acres of property to the park. And unfortunately, I wish the properties that Watchtower snatched ended up in the park, but unfortunately they bought the property that International Nickel had, and when International Nickel went out of business, actually a evangelical college came into the facility, and they ran a evangelical college there for a while called King's College. And so they named the street, the entrance into the college, King's Drive. So if anybody wonders how the name King's Drive came to that little road that enters into the Watchtower headquarters, it has nothing to do with the kingdom or Jehovah's Witnesses at all. It has something to do, and everything to do, with evangelical Christian college called King's College. And so that's how that road came to be. It has nothing to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. But just telling the story because you and I can make a difference. And you guys and your response and your support, your positive response to my video motivated me again to contact my congressman. And this time, instead of sending an email and hoping for a response, I called them up. And I spoke with the staffer, and they have a local office only a couple of miles from my house. They're actually between my house and Watchtower, and so they're about as far away from Watchtower as they are from me. And I was able to set up an appointment for Thursday, April 25th, to speak with someone on Congressman Gottheimer's staff. He's my local congressman. And hopefully I'm able to capture their interest. And I think if enough people did that sort of thing, we as American citizens have that right. Even if you didn't vote, I know how hard it is to get over a mindset. It took me. I haven't met with the Bible students since 2004, and I've only voted twice in my whole life, and this was the last two elections, the last two Novembers. So I voted in the presidential election, and I voted last November for, we were electing a governor here in New Jersey. So I'm new to it, and it's because of this mental frame of mind that I got used to the idea of not being involved, because that was pounded in me that it was wrong for us to get involved, because God had everything in hand, and that he was the one that was in charge, and that Satan was the one that ruled or was the force behind all other governments. And so it sticks with you. Change doesn't happen right away. And but now I want to get involved, and I'm trying to take advantage of it to the best of my ability and within my rights as an American citizen. And I think if anybody else, feels strongly about Watchtower, they have that perfect right to go talk to their congressman or somebody in their staff and raise your concerns over the Watchtower. And this is not just a local issue. It is a local issue, but it also is a national issue because they are spread all across the country, and they're all across the world. They're a global concern, and they're sending individuals. Their policies protect individuals that are a threat to society, and it's quite clear that that's the case. I mean, the Australian Royal Commission issued a report, and I downloaded that report, that talked about all of the deficiencies and changes that need to be made. They saw through the lies of Watchtower, and they didn't buy it when they questioned Watchtower representatives, including Jeffrey Jackson. Yes, thank you for reminding me who it was. I forgot the name. It slipped my mind in my last video. But he lied, and they're not against lying. And so, you know, it's your right. It's your right to take action. Even if you didn't vote, it's your right. You're an American citizen. So that was one thing. And there was another thing. You may all remember when in the Louis Lopez case against what's his name, Campos, Gonzalo Campos, this letter that was issued by Garrett Loesch when he was subpoenaed to testify in court in San Diego, Superior Court, California Court in San Diego, for the case as representative of the Watchtower, who was being sued by Louis Lopez for not protecting him and overlooking this Campos fellow who was a known pedophile and protecting him. And they're still protecting him. He moved, I understand, back to Mexico, and he hasn't been turned over to the authorities yet. But everybody remembers this affidavit because it was jaw-dropping, because he defied the court. Garrett Loesch defied the court by saying that he is a member of the governing body, and that the governing body is the highest ecclesiastical authority for the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses, and exercises spiritual oversight for Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide. I am not, and never have been, a corporate officer, director, managing agent, member, or employee of Watchtower. I do not direct and have never directed the day-to-day operations of Watchtower. I do not answer to Watchtower. I do not have and never had any authority as an individual to make or determine corporate policy for Watchtower or any Watchtower department or any department of Watchtower. And that's a lie, and everybody knows it. That's why he was deposed, and that's why he was subpoenaed to come to testify, because everybody understood. It's an understood fact that the governing body is the highest authority in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the Watchtower is part of the Jehovah's Witnesses. And if this letter is true for Garrett Loesch, it's true for the entire governing body. That he is not just speaking for himself here, he's speaking for the relationship that every one of the governing body has. Well, everybody knows that this was a ploy to avoid his coming to testify, and the judge saw through it and issued a contempt of court and fined them $2,000 a day for each day that they didn't respond. And that went on for a couple of years. I believe they finally settled that case, and I think that the $2,000 a day fine has been stopped. I believe it has. I haven't checked up on it lately, but it ended up tallying in the millions. And the Watchtower Society challenged and opposed the payment of this fine, and they lost. I believe they took it to the Supreme Court of California, where they appealed this this fine, this $2,000 a day fine, and they lost that appeal. So Watchtower is paying quite a high price for their lies, but not enough. And now this letter is important because I think they were taking a chance on this. Now, if you look at the IRS rules on tax exemption, the I think it's 503C or 501C3 regulations. It's explicit as to how a tax-exempt organization is to be structured. And if you read through those regulations, it indicates that for tax exemption, they should be structured like a corporation with a membership body, a body of members, and the membership elects the directors. And the directors are the body that are to hold the power within the tax-exempt corporation. And they're the ones that call the shots, set the policies. It's the directors that really wield the power, hold the power, and they're the guys that are supposed to elect the officers. And they establish the president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, whatever officers that the corporation has. And those are selected by the board of directors. So the power is to be vested in the board of directors. Now, that is not the case with Watchtower. The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, they have a facade of a president. I believe it was Don Adams. I don't know if he's still alive. He's got to be ancient at this point, if he's still alive. Don Adams was the last president that I was aware of. And they have a number of individuals that represent the directors and so on. But everybody knows that these individuals are token. They're basically they're not the guys that are really calling the shots for Watchtower. That it is the governing body. Yet the governing body is not connected to the Watchtower. So there's this dichotomy and this inconsistency, and it doesn't align with the IRS rules for how a tax-exempt organization is to be run. If you look at the rules, there are no other options. They don't give you options to set up your tax-free exempt corporation. They give you the structure it's supposed to have. But the real power behind Watchtower is not the board of directors. It's not the president. It used to be the president, but it's not the president. It is the board. It is this group of governing body members, Garrett Lotion and Company. Now, the rules under the 503C or 501C3, I think it is. You can look it up. Just look up IRS tax exempt, and you can get directed right to the regulations themselves. Now, they indicate in that donations that are made to tax exempt organizations are nobody is to profit from them. That money is donated for a certain designated purpose, and that it should go to that purpose, that charitable purpose. Now, this they indicate that even the founder of the tax-exempt charity or organization is not to benefit monetarily from this, nor any private person. And in relationship to the Watchtower, this letter clearly indicates that the governing body are private individuals in their relationship to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. So there's no connection, and that begs the question then: who are paying the expenses for these individuals? The Cadillac that Tony Morris drives, the roof over their heads, the pinky ring that Stephen Lett wears, the Rolex watches, the fine tailored suits that they wear on JW Broadcasting. Who is funding their meals and their travel around the world to exotic locations where they give talks about, like Tony Morris down in the Caribbean, where he talks about the traditional street corner party where they drink, I guess it's some kind of a rum drink. He loves to glorify alcohol, doesn't he? He's got, I think there's more than one bit of evidence that he's got a bit of an alcohol problem there. But that is just conjecture. It's not definitively known. I mean, that liquor that he bought on March 31st could have been for some other reason. Others pointed out that he could have been on a Saturday morning meeting instead of Sunday. There are a number of potential excuses that could give Tony a bye. Well, the thing is, no. Tony is a representative that stands for something higher. He tells people how to live and a very strict moral code. And he is not above that. He is to be an example. And as an example, he is to lead as a standard, a life that is sacrificial. That means he has to sacrifice those things that would be okay for others to do, because he's really an example for setting an example for how people should live, at least from his moral perspective. And he is going to be one of the 144,000 that rules the world forever with Christ. So, you know, it's just pathetic. So, where is this going to? Well, it's clear that people aren't supposed to be benefiting from this charity. And you know, it's very interesting. People may think that, oh, well, I'm actually donating to the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Worldwide Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, there is on jw.org, there is a video that I downloaded that talks about how to make donations, explicitly how to make electronic donations. And in this example, they give the charitable organization as the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York. So it's clear that the charitable organization is the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, the same Watchtower Bible and Tract Society that the governing body has no connection to. No connection to. They're just the spiritual voice of Watchtower. So again, who's putting the roof over their heads? Who's filling their stomach? Who's buying their booze? Who's buying the car? Who's buying the pinky rings and the Rolex watches and the fine suits and the travel? Who's paying for that? The Worldwide Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York or Pennsylvania, or whoever the donations are being made to. That's who's paying for it. And so, for individuals interested, I looked up on the IRS webpage to see if there's a way to talk about suspected tax fraud, because if you're not in exact alignment with the regulations and the law, then you're violating tax code, and you're basically committing tax fraud. And so they have there was no telephone number I could call, although there were numbers for local IRS offices, and that's basically to find out whether or not you've got an issue with your own personal taxes. But they did have a segment there for people who, if you have a complaint about somebody or a business that you think may be committing tax fraud, they have a form. You send it in. You can write a letter that explains exactly what you're concerned with, why you think that they may be committing tax fraud, and it's anonymous, so you don't have to reveal your own information. It's kept anonymous. And if you file these, if enough of us file these forms, the IRS might take notice and investigate the Watchtower for its maybe improprieties in dealing with the tax-exempt rules. Now, for tax-exempt corporations, are they audited? No, they're not audited. Once a church, once a tax-exempt charity is established, the IRS will not audit them unless by an act of Congress or by a number of complaints. Now, if there are enough complaints sent in, they will be investigated, but they will not be audited, and they have not been audited. Having had this tax-exempt status for years and years, the Watchtower has never been audited by the IRS. The IRS has never paid any attention to them. And so I think this is something, this is an avenue, an area that people, I'm not a lawyer, I can't say whether or not I'm right or wrong, but I think that there's good reason to believe, given the information that we know, knowing what the tax code says about exempt organizations, I think that there's good reason to believe that Watchtower is not aligned with the tax code, and I think that filing, there's no harm in filing one of these for the Watchtower, because they warrant it. They're giving information to people, telling who to donate to, which is the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, or the Watchtower owned branch offices, and the governing body in their charter claims second. This basically, this letter to the court that Garrett Loesch sent was pulled out of the Watchtower charter. If you look at you can get the Watchtower charter from the 2003. It's a 2003 charter you can get from Barbara Anderson's Watchtower documents. I doubt that if there's been an update to their charter that it changed any. That it's probably basically the same. Otherwise, you wouldn't get a letter like this from dated 2014 that says that they're not connected to the Watchtower. So their charter probably still is the same. I couldn't find anything about their bylaws. Now, I haven't I'm not enough of a research. I don't have enough time for the research to look for bylaws. I'm not sure that they've got bylaws, but I have seen their charter, and their charter is set up like bylaws are set up. So it could be that the Watchtower only has a charter. And again, thank you so much for the overwhelming response for my channel last week. It really is encouraging that so many individuals felt the way they did. You are right to be angry because of the hypocrisy and the arrogance of the Watchtower's leaders. They really are arrogant. They fly it and they wave it in your face, and they ruin your families at the same time by shunning. And now they're going after the individuals who are leaking information out of Watchtower by going after people with who use their material under the fair use provisions of the copyright law. And there's quite a discussion on that on the John Cedars channel. I suggest that you listen to. I listened to part of it. I wasn't able to listen to the whole thing, and tomorrow on my way to work, I'll turn it on and listen to the whole session that they had to say. In that, they did have a legal counsel that on copyright law that they had on their In Focus program, who spoke, and I'm interested in hearing what he had to say. I deal with a lot of lawyers in my job. There's one other thing. I was contacted yesterday by a young man who had been a Bible student. I can't tell you how thrilled I am that I was contacted. I really am doing this for the next generation. You have to have tough skin if you do this kind of thing. And one of the comments I got last week on the Tony Morris video really lashed out at me. I just looked like his comment was blah blah blah, balding old man who wants to hear anything you have to say. Well, good. You don't have to listen to me if you don't want. Just because I'm older doesn't necessarily mean that I'm out of my mind either, and I have nothing to offer. In fact, I think after a number of years of experience, I wasn't exactly the model Bible student kid, and I was somewhat the black sheep. So I know both sides of the street. Trying my hardest to be the best Bible student I could be. At the same time, I also know what it's like to be the black sheep. One of my family members, so I'm in trouble here. I think somebody's made a mad face at me, so I better get this done with. So anyway, it's been a thrill to hear from this individual, and I hope to remain in contact and talk more about it. I just wish there were more younger Bible students who could see through the facade of all of this. And I think understanding an objective history of Russell is enough. I mean to see through the whole thing, that he was just this man. He wasn't this character that God put here on earth. He wasn't a messenger, a Laodicean messenger, or a wise or faithful servant, or the man with the inkhorn and all that other stuff that the Bible students gush over him. He was just a flawed, very, very, very flawed man And you can find a lot about him individually. Just do your own research on Ancestry, and you can get an awful lot of information. So anyway, this has gotten to be a long video, and I just want to say thank you again to everybody, and until next time, I wish you well.